You sleep in my bed, you wake up as my woman. The wind screamed across the Montana prairie as the old stagecoach fought through sheets of rain. Thunder rolled over the mountains, and every passenger prayed the storm would pass. Among them sat Emma Carter, a young woman whose heart had already been broken long before the storm arrived. She had traveled nearly 1,000 miles to marry a man who had promised her a new life in the West. His letters had been filled with sweet words, dreams of a ranch, and promises of forever. But promises were easy to write. The moment Emma stepped off the stagecoach, the man barely looked at her. You're not what I imagined, he muttered. Emma stared at him in disbelief. What do you mean? You're taller, stronger, and different than I expected. I'm sorry. With those cold words, he walked away without looking back. Emma stood alone beneath the pouring rain, clutching a small suitcase that suddenly felt heavier than her entire life. The town was nearly empty. Every hotel had closed for the night because of the storm. No one wanted to take in a stranger. She whispered to herself, "Where am I supposed to go?" That was when a deep voice answered. "You'll freeze before sunrise." Emma turned around. Standing beside a tall chestnut horse was a quiet rancher dressed in a worn leather coat. "My name is Jack Dawson," he said. "My ranch is a few miles from here." Emma hesitated. "I don't even know you." Jack nodded. "You shouldn't trust strangers." He paused before adding softly. "But you shouldn't die because of one." The ride to Jack's ranch was silent except for the sound of rain hitting the wagon. Emma expected questions. He asked none. When they finally reached the cabin, warm lantern light spilled through the windows. Jack opened the door. "It's not much," he admitted. Inside was a simple wooden cabin with a fireplace, a rocking chair, and one bedroom. Emma looked around. "Where will I sleep?" Jack smiled politely. "In my bed." Emma's eyes widened. He quickly continued. "I'll sleep in the barn." She blinked. "What? I won't have a guest sleeping on the floor." "You don't even know me." "No," Jack replied. "But my mother raised me to protect people before judging them." Without another word, he grabbed a blanket and walked toward the barn. Emma watched him disappear into the rain. For the first time in weeks, she felt safe. Morning sunlight poured through the bedroom window. Emma slowly opened her eyes. The smell of fresh coffee drifted through the cabin. She walked into the kitchen. Jack stood quietly making breakfast. Neither spoke for several minutes. Finally, Emma broke the silence. "You really slept in the barn?" Jack laughed. "The horses snore." Emma smiled for the first time in months. "You gave up your bed for someone you don't know." Jack shrugged. "Kindness costs less than regret." Days turned into weeks. Emma offered to leave many times. Jack never stopped her. He simply said, "The road is always open." Yet she stayed. She repaired torn curtains, cooked meals, helped mend fences. She even learned to ride the wild horses that terrified most ranch hands. Jack watched her from a distance. She wasn't delicate. She wasn't perfect. She was fearless. And every day he admired her a little more. One evening they sat beside a campfire. The stars stretched endlessly above them. Emma asked quietly, "Why do you live alone?" Jack stared into the flames. "My wife died 5 years ago." Emma froze. "I didn't know. I don't tell many people." Silence settled between them. Then Jack asked, "What about you?" Emma looked toward the mountains. "I stopped believing anyone could love me." Jack answered without hesitation. "I think someone simply failed to see your worth." Emma's eyes filled with tears. No one had ever said that to her before. Winter arrived early. Snow buried the ranch beneath white hills. One afternoon Jack never returned from checking the cattle. Emma grew worried. She saddled a horse and rode into the storm. Hours later she found him trapped beneath a fallen tree. His leg was badly injured. Without hesitation she worked for nearly an hour to free him. Then she dragged him onto the horse and slowly guided them home through the blizzard. For 3 days Emma barely slept. She changed his bandages, cooked soup, kept the fire burning. Whenever Jack apologized for being a burden, she smiled. You once saved me. Now it's my turn. Spring finally melted the snow. Jack could walk again. The ranch was alive with green grass and newborn calves. Everything seemed perfect. Until one afternoon, the man who had abandoned Emma returned. He arrived in an expensive wagon wearing a fine suit. Emma, he called. I made a mistake. Jack quietly stepped back. He refused to interfere. The decision belonged to her. The man continued. I've become successful. I can give you everything. Emma looked toward Jack. He was repairing a fence without saying a word. No pressure. No jealousy. Just respect. She walked toward her former fiancé. I once crossed America because I believed your promises. He smiled hopefully. She continued. But I found something far more valuable. What? A man whose actions speak louder than promises. She turned away. The man left without another word. That evening Jack stood outside watching the sunset. Emma joined him. You didn't try to stop me. Jack smiled softly. If someone loves you, they should never make your choice for you. Emma stepped closer. I already made it. Jack looked confused. She reached into her pocket. Inside was the small silver ring she had once planned to wear at another wedding. She tossed it into the river. It belonged to a lie. Then she looked into Jack's eyes. You once told me, you sleep in my bed, you wake up as my woman. Jack laughed nervously. I never actually said that. Emma grinned. No, but that's exactly how life turned out. For a moment neither moved. Then Jack gently took her hand. I don't have fancy speeches. I don't have riches. I only have this ranch. And a heart that's yours if you'll have it. Emma's answer came with happy tears. I've been home since the night you opened your door. Jack kissed her beneath the golden Montana sunset as the wind carried away every memory of heartbreak. A year later the little ranch had become famous across the valley, not for its cattle, but for the kindness that lived there. Travelers who lost their way always found a warm meal. Children laughed in the fields. Neighbors gathered every Sunday for music and supper. Above the cabin door hung a hand-carved wooden sign. There is always room for one more. Whenever people asked Emma how she had found such happiness, she would smile and say, the greatest love of my life didn't begin with flowers, money, or promises. It began on the coldest night of my life, when a quiet rancher gave a broken stranger his bed, slept in the barn, and showed me that real love is never spoken first, it is lived. And from that day forward, every sunrise over the Montana hills reminded them both that sometimes the road that begins with heartbreak leads straight to the home your heart was always searching for. Please friends subscribe my channel.